Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies of Second Kings. Today we're in Second Kings chapter 2, and this is going to be the time of Elijah leaving by means of a chariot of fire. And I want you to notice some of the things that transpire in this chapter that while you see them, we oftentimes focus on what happens with Elijah, and we don't necessarily take the time to consider some things that really do have application to us in this particular chapter. I want us to begin with the relationship between Elijah and Elisha. If you go back to 1 Kings chapter 19, you have Elisha being recruited by Elijah at the behest of God. And in part, it is because of Elijah's own frustration and depression and things of that nature, with the fact that he has been working alone, he has been in exile, he has been traveling alone for many years now, and doesn't have anyone to really join forces with. And so he is going to be given Elisha. It has now been several years that Elijah and Elisha have been working together. And when you come into 2 Kings chapter 2, you find this situation where Elijah's departure is somewhat the already known secret. Everybody knows that what is going to happen to Elijah. Elijah knows, Elisha knows, the rest of the prophets in the nation know, as you see throughout the chapter. On multiple occasions, the prophets in the various cities are going to come out, and they're going to tell Elisha, "Do you know what's about to happen?" And he says, "I know, be quiet." But I want you to notice the relationship between Elijah and Elisha. Because Elijah, on multiple occasions, is going to tell Elisha to just go ahead and leave. Just everything will be fine. And Elisha says on 3 different occasions, "As the Lord lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you." You know, oftentimes when we think of that particular mentality, we think about it from the standpoint of Ruth and her relationship with her mother-in-law, Naomi. And yet here you have a relationship between these two prophets of God, where the one who has been trained and prepared and has worked with and studied next to the other one for years is not going to leave him until he is gone. There is a level of dedication that is there. There is a level of friendship that is there. There is a level of camaraderie that is there, where Elisha is not going to leave Elijah to face anything by himself. That is something that is unique. It is definitely something that is valuable and that is important. You know, true friendship is going to stick together. It is going to refuse to leave or to set things aside given difficult or trying circumstances, or even expected circumstances that are beyond your control. Elijah and Elisha serve as an excellent example of being dedicated to not just a cause, but to a relationship, to the point that you're not willing to let it go without reason and without purpose. But also, when you see Elijah and Elisha here in chapter 2, you also see the giving of Elisha's responsibility. Because Elisha is trained, and he has been trained to be Elijah's replacement. That is the entire purpose of him having been chosen by God, was so that Elijah could train him to replace him. And so Elijah is going to give Elisha his mantle, his coat, before he is going to leave. And Elisha is going to somewhat use that as a symbol of the transfer of responsibility. He's going to put it to the test when it comes to the crossing of the Jordan River. And it's going to, though the power is not in the code, it's going to serve as a sign that Elisha has the same responsibility, but he also has the same blessings of God that Elijah had. Elisha is then going to seek to go forth and do what Elijah did in serving the people of God and in serving God himself. Elisha has a very important responsibility at a time in which it's not popular to be a prophet of God, even though there are far more prophets of God now than there were in the days of Ahab. But Elisha is going to be the replacement. But it's not a figurehead position. It is a job of work and responsibility that Elisha takes very seriously. And that leads us into what transpires at the end of the chapter. While this seems to be somewhat of a harsh situation, you see beginning in verse 22 and following that Elisha is going to go up to Bethel. And you're going to have these youths. We do not know the age of these youths. In Scripture, the idea of youth could often be individuals in their teens and 20s. And so we don't know the exact age of those involved. But as Elisha is going up from Jericho to Bethel, there are people that come from Bethel. And they come down to mock him and to deride him and to try to, as it were, chase him off. Now remember, this is in the concept and the confines of Elisha's responsibility, not just to the people, but his responsibility as the replacement for Elijah and as the prophet of God. And they're telling him to go up. Notice these people don't come from Jericho, where he came from. They're not following him down the road. These are the people who are coming out from Bethel and telling him to go away. Go up, you bald head. Go up, you bald head. It is as though they are trying to keep Elisha from taking on his responsibilities, and that they are not accepting Elisha as a prophet of God. Thus you have the response where he pronounces a curse on them in the name of the Lord. He is showing to them that he actually has the authority and the backing of God for who he is and what he does. Is it an extreme case? Yes. But when it states that there were 42 youths that were mauled by the two mama bears, you recognize that's not every individual likely that was there. This was not just a gang of 5 or 6 teenagers. This was a mob that had come out and was telling Elisha that he had no responsibility, he had no authority, he had no means of being there, no purpose for being there. And Elisha is going to show that that's just simply not the case. And from that point on, nobody will question whether or not Elisha is a designated prophet of God. When you see 2 Kings chapter 2, you see things that are oftentimes put to the side because of the amazing nature of the events that happen with Elijah. And yet we see in 2 Kings 2 lessons concerning friendship, lessons concerning responsibility, but also lessons concerning respecting the authority that God has put in place. And that we don't have the right, as these youths did, to say about an individual that God has put in place based on his commands and his authority, that person doesn't have the right to take that responsibility and to use it. So there are a number of things that we can see from this chapter that have applications to us and that are things that we should learn from and grow from. And I hope that these have been beneficial to you. Next time we'll come back and we'll begin looking at 2 Kings chapter 3. I hope that you'll join us for that study. But until then, have a great day.